1,001 things everyone should know about African American history. What if I told you that there's almost an entire generation that doesn't know what the NAACP is, which stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People? Can you believe that? Almost an entire generation. They think that African American history started with slavery and ended with Martin Luther King. That's it. That's not just a gap, that's a setup. They don't know about African American history as it pertains to our elders having a struggle against Jim Crow laws. And some don't even know about Thurgood Marshall, the first African American Supreme Court justice member who helped the Brown versus the Board of Education and so many other cases. But that's not by mistake, it's by plan. Because we have to understand that history isn't just being forgotten, it's being erased deliberately. And if we don't do anything about it now, then we're going to watch our legacy literally slip away from us. Everything that we have ever fought for, we will end up repeating it all over again.
Schools all over the United States banning race-based books for obvious reasons, right? They don't want their students, when I say their students, the students that look like them, to learn about what their people did to black people, right? On the plantation, Jim Crow, and even now. They don't want that before them. But let me ask you this. This is some common sense thinking. Do you have those books at home?
Across the country, textbooks are being rewritten and removed. Black authors being banned, and lessons on slavery and civil rights being softened or completely taken out. Because as we've heard, our children will grow up with hate in their heart. They don't want their children knowing the harshness of slavery. They don't want them growing up with fixed ideals on American people and their grandparents. When the truth is, that's just the truth that we have to face. There was once upon a time when white Americans and black Americans could not stand on the same side of the street, couldn't go into the same restaurants, couldn't be in the same places. But today, all that's changed. Taken with what has changed, we have to understand and grow together to not let hate come into our hearts, but let there be an understanding of the history that we have been through in this country, which is American history. And if you take that slavery aspect from American history, you don't have an America anymore. You have a lot. But we have to understand this one thing, right? As Americans, this history is American history. African American history is American history. And if white Americans don't like African American history, then they aren't true Americans. And so we have to understand that when they take the truth from the classroom, they're not only changing the curriculum, they're changing the future. As some say, they don't want their children growing up learning about the cruelty and the harshness of slavery. But that's just the reality that we have to face. Because in this country, just over 100 years ago, we were segregated. And even further, we were slaves. But they want to continue to teach American history without teaching what Americans have been through. The question now becomes, how patriotic are you? Are you a true American? Where is your patriotism? What does that do to Americans? Does that change the concept of what American is? Moral of the story, young people are being raised in a society not telling them the full story. And the less they know where they come from, the easier it is to tell them their future and where they're going. They don't get an option to decide. But what if there's a way to still hold on to African American history in our communities beyond the classroom? And that's why this book right here, 1,001 Things Everyone Should Know About African American History, matters. This ain't just a paper. It puts the power of knowledge back in your hands. No permission needed. No school board vote required. Just truth organized into 6 chapters just for you. The first chapter we see in this book is Great Migrations. The Great Migration wasn't just movement. It was transformation. Millions were leaving the Jim Crow South and were changing the culture of cities forever. We see millions of African Americans leave the South and seek freedom from racial terror, go find better jobs, and live in safer communities in the North. We also see Harlem became the heartbeat of Black art, literature, and political thought, giving birth to the Harlem Renaissance and a new sense of collective identity. And then we go on to see Black-owned newspapers like the Chicago Defender guided and connected migrants, spreading crucial information and rallying resistance through the written word. In other words, it shows how we were rising up from our past. And then on to number 2, it goes on to talk about civil rights and politics. Beyond the marches and steps, there lies a deeper fight, the fight for equality. And the NAACP legally helped dismantle segregation brick by brick. From background organizers like Ella Baker to Brother Malcolm and Dr. King, they all offered different but vital visions that are still relevant today. And this book gives you the full scope. For example, we see the March on Washington, the 1963 March, that united over 250,000 people demanding civil and economic rights, a powerful display of Black strength and strategy. And then we see Shirley Chisholm, who shattered political ceilings as the first black woman elected to Congress and the first to run for president, declaring she was unbought and unbossed. And then we see Ella Baker portrait. She was one of the quiet forces behind the movement, mentoring young leaders and organizing grassroots power from behind the scenes. It talks about how we need more than heroes, how we need context. In this book, it gives you both. Then number 3, it goes on to talk about African Americans in the military. From the revolution to Iraq, we fought for freedoms we were denied at home, but our sacrifices often go unmentioned. Our courage doesn't need rewriting, it needs remembering. And throughout this book, it shows the Tuskegee Airmen, how these elite World War II pilots broke barriers in the air and proved black excellence in a segregated military, challenging racist stereotypes. We also see the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Monument, the first black regiment to fight in the Civil War. They volunteered to fight for a freedom that had not yet been guaranteed to them. It goes into depth to show that African Americans had courage and pride to be American, even when the country didn't recognize them as people or even care for them. Then as we go into number 4, culture and religion. Where my church folk at? From the sorrow songs of slavery to the rhythms of hip hop, we've sung our pain and power into the fabric of America. Culture is our soul, and this book honors it. For example, we see the black church worship has always been a cornerstone of faith, resistance, and leadership, a sacred place that held communities together. It goes on to show figures like Langston Hughes, how he captured the heartbeat of black life with poems that spoke to beauty, struggle, and everyday resistance. And it also talks about the gospel choir, how gospel music evolved from slave spirituals, becoming both worship and a weapon, inspiring generations to push through with pain and praise, and as it later developed into blues and much other. And it goes on to talk about how gospel music not only shaped the churches of America, but shaped the people within them. Then for number 5, we have invention, science, and medicine. We've always been creators, innovators, problem solvers, but our contributions are often whitewashed or ignored. This section alone is a mic drop. And it goes on to show George Washington Carver, he pioneered agricultural science and sustainability, helping Southern farmers survive in the midst of navigating racism and lack of resources. Then we see tributes by Henrietta Lacks, how her cells were taken without consent and became a foundation of modern medicine, from vaccines to cancer research, sparking crucial bioethics and debates. It really puts things into perspectives about modern day science and how we continue to lead in innovation, despite being underrepresented and having a lack of visibility. For African Americans to acknowledge their worth in all areas of life, not just in the military or not just in, being people who uprose from slavery, but for people who have these great accomplishments and innovations, who have, done wonderful things in science, mathematics, and so many other areas. Then for number 6, we have sports. Black athletes haven't just broken records, they've broken barriers. Sports has always been political, and black athletes have always led with courage, never afraid to speak, even when people wanted them to be quiet. As we see by one of the examples in the book, it shows Jesse Owens' Olympics. And at the 1936 Olympics, how Owens defied Nazi propaganda and global racism with 4 gold medals and legendary grace under pressure. Then we see Muhammad Ali giving up his title and being faced to jail for refusing to be drafted, a stand that echoed the spiritual and political strength of the movement. It goes into depth about how African Americans have not only exceeded expectations when underrepresented, but have also created and cultivated an image that the world will forever not like. But in all the 6 major topics in this book. And so it gives you an opportunity to see yourself through a new lens, of the limited pictures that we have today. It shows you people who look like you, who are excelling in things that you may be even excelling in or want to take a hand in. Now, here's the hard truth. If you don't have this book, you're trusting the same people who are erasing your history and who have erased your history to educate your children. What happens when this book disappears too? When it's no longer in print? When the only version left is their version. And so you really have to take it back to self. What do I want to stand for? Either I care about things now, or the things that I didn't care for once will come back to haunt me. Because for so long, we fought for equality. So long, we fought for the ability to be educated, right? So long to be able to be at this certain standard. And now that we have the information, we're just going to let it fly. This textbook allows you to start building your own library in African American history before they wipe off the shelves. It is your representation of your history through your own lens. This book is the first step into grabbing your library of African American history. The message is build your own library before they burn and take what they want out of the public ones. This isn't just a call to action, but this is a call to preservation, to remember where we came from so that we can know where we're going. The goal in mind is to understand where we came from so that we can understand where we're going. We may not know our destination, but at least we'll know the journey that will take us there. At least we'll know the same roads that we traveled are the same roads that our ancestors have traveled on. And to me, that's more than life itself. And the best part, you can get this book right now for 15% off on Amazon, just a little over $18. Can you imagine that? That's as much as some of y'all Chick-fil-A orders. But you gotta understand that it's not just feeding you temporarily. This go feed you for generations. While you are investing in your future, don't forget to invest in your children's future as well. Act now before the price rises, or even worse, it's completely gone. Who knows? They might ban this book too. And so you're probably thinking about legacy, right? So let's break it down. Many of you think legacy is strictly money or when you leave money behind in the will. But the truth is, legacy starts way before a bank account. Trust me. By definition, legacy means, in the first meaning, an amount of money or property left to someone in a will. For example, my grandmother died and unexpectedly left me a small legacy. Similar words would be like inheritance, endowment, heirloom, and birthright. But there's a second meaning, and it hits way deeper than the first one. Legacy is the long-lasting impact of a person's life or the actions that echo into the future. The actions that echo into the future. It's what lives after you're gone, not just in things, but in people. To take it even a step further, let's break the word down. So from Latin, we get the word legatus, meaning ambassador, envoy, or one who is sent with a purpose. In Greek, it aligns with kleronomia, meaning inheritance or heritage passed on with responsibility. So legacy isn't just about leaving something behind, but it's about sending something forward on purpose. This makes me think about the quote by Marcus Garvey. He said, "A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And a tree without roots, if the storm comes through, is going to fall over." And that leads us right into what Malcolm X said. And I quote, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." And that's why we don't just need our children to be doers, but we need them to be thinkers. We need them to build with their hands, but also be strategic with their mind. Not only being able to play one side of the table, but being able to play both sides. In other words, is your defense as good as your offense? So remember, you are the history maker. The present is the gift that allows you to change history. As you become the seed planter, generations will come after you to pick up what you left behind. And when the next child asks, "Who are we?" you won't have to guess. You'll have it right in your hands. Now, I want you to say this with me. I'm going to put the letters on the screen. I am my ancestors' investment, and the return is generational. We're going to read that one more time. I am my ancestors' investment, and the return is generational. Don't let that go over your heads. Click the link below to get your copy today. Don't just buy a book, buy a legacy. Teach what they won't preach, and preserve what they won't keep. And as always, continue to find your why and walk in truth. Too true.